Have you ever seen a man build a world record machine using old kitchen junk? Imagine a person so poor that he had to melt down old car parts in a tin can. Most people his age were sitting in rocking chairs. But this man was different. He had a dream that was 40 years old. He lived in a tiny shed with his bike. He worked on it for 20 years. Everyone thought he was a bit crazy. They said his motorcycle belonged in a museum, not on a racetrack. But they were wrong. He was about to shock the entire world. This is the story of Burt Munro. He was a grandfather from a small town in New Zealand. He did not have a team of engineers. He did not have thousands of dollars. He only had his hands and a very old motorcycle. In this video, we will look at how he turned a slow bike into a rocket. You will see the dangerous journey he took to the other side of the world. You will learn how he beat the fastest teams in history. I have a special reward for you if you stay until the very end. I will share the secret of his final record run. It is a detail that many people miss. It involves a risky choice that almost cost him his life. You will not want to miss this part. But first, we must go back to where it all began. We need to see how a simple salesman became a legend of speed. This journey starts with a very special red motorcycle. It was a bike that would change his life forever. Burt was born in 1899 in a small town in New Zealand. Even as a young boy, he loved speed. He watched fast trains and early cars with great wonder. In 1920, he saw a brand new motorcycle. It was a red Indian Scout. It was shiny and fresh from the factory. Burt knew he had to have it. He worked hard and saved his money. Finally, he bought the bike. At that time, the bike was not very fast. It could only go about 50 miles per hour. For most people, that was enough. But for Burt, it was just the start. He wanted to see how much faster it could go. Life was busy for Burt. He worked as a motorcycle salesman for many years. He got married and had children. But he never stopped thinking about his Indian Scout. He spent all his free time in his garage. He took the engine apart and put it back together. He looked for ways to make it stronger. He did not have fancy tools. He used what he could find. He studied books about engines at night. He became an expert on his own. He was not just a rider anymore. He was becoming a master builder. As the years passed, the world changed. Faster and better bikes were built by big companies. People told Burt his bike was too old. They said it was out of date. They thought he was wasting his time on a relic. But Burt did not care about new bikes. He loved his old Indian. He believed he could make it beat the newest machines. He decided to quit his job so he could work on the bike full-time. He moved into his small work shed. He lived a very simple life. He saved every penny for his motorcycle. This was the start of his long climb to the top. Burt's workshop was a tiny shed. It was not a professional garage. It was just a small space filled with old metal and oil. He lived and slept in that same shed to save time. He did not have money to buy new parts for his engine. This is where his true genius showed. When he needed a new part, he made it himself. He found old pieces of iron from junk piles. He once used an old axe head to help build a part. He even melted down old engine parts from a Chevrolet car. He did this in a simple tin can over a fire. Burt was very creative with his tools. He used a piece of an old tire to help shape his bike. He made his own engine parts by hand. This took thousands of hours. Most people would have given up after 1 week. Burt did this for 20 years. He worked all day and late into the night. His neighbors could hear him testing his engine at all hours. Some people thought he was just a lonely old man. But he was actually a scientist of speed. He was learning things that even the big car companies did not know. He faced many failures during these years. His engine would often break or explode. This was very dangerous. But Burt never got angry. He would just pick up the pieces and start again. He kept a wall of shame in his shed. He hung up all the parts that had broken during his tests. It reminded him of what not to do next time. He was slowly turning his 1920 motorcycle into a super machine. He was ready to take his invention out of the shed. He wanted to show the world what a man with a dream could do. By the early 1960s, Burt knew he was ready. He had pushed his bike as far as it could go in New Zealand. He wanted to go to the Bonneville Salt Flats in America. This is a huge, flat desert of white salt. It is the most famous place in the world for speed. But getting there was a huge problem. Burt was an old man with very little money. He had to sell almost everything he owned. He worked on a cargo ship to pay for his trip. He slept in a small bunk and helped with chores. He carried his precious motorcycle in a wooden crate. He was leaving his home to chase a dream across the ocean. When he finally arrived in America, things were not easy. He did not have a truck to carry his bike. He bought an old, broken car and fixed it himself. He drove across the hot desert toward the salt flats. When he finally arrived at Bonneville, the professional racers were shocked. They saw a 68-year-old man with a bike held together by bits of wire and old metal. They told him his bike was a death trap. The officials said it was too dangerous to race. They did not want to let him on the track. Burt was heartbroken, but he did not give up. He talked to the other riders and showed them his work. He explained how he had built every part by hand. The other racers began to see that Burt was a genius. They started to help him. They spoke to the officials for him. Finally, the judges changed their minds. They gave Burt a chance to ride. He was finally standing on the white salt. The sun was hot and the wind was calm. He put on his old leather gear and sat on his red bike. The world was watching the old man from New Zealand. It was time to see if the junk in his shed could really fly. The engine roared to life with a sound like thunder. Burt tucked his body low against the bike. He was 68 years old, but in that moment, he felt like a teenager. The wind hit him with incredible force. As he gained speed, the motorcycle began to shake. This was the death wobble that the judges feared. The bike was moving so fast that the metal body started to vibrate violently. It was like riding a wild animal. Most people would have let go of the gas. But Burt held on. He knew his machine. He knew every bolt and every wire because he had put them there himself. He crossed the salt at a speed no one thought possible for a 1920 Indian Scout. The official clock stopped at over 184 miles per hour. During one part of the run, he actually hit 205 miles per hour. The crowd was silent, then they began to cheer. The old man from the small shed had done it. He had set a world record. Even more amazing was that he did it with a heart condition. He was in pain, and his legs were burned by the hot engine, but he was smiling. He had proven that age and money do not define what a person can achieve. Burt went back to Bonneville many times after that. He became a legend among the racers there. He never got rich from his records. He went back to his shed in New Zealand and kept working on his bike until the day he died. Today, his record for that class of motorcycle still stands. It has been decades, and no one has beaten it. His bike is now in a museum, but his spirit lives on in every person who has a big dream and a small budget. He showed us that impossible is just a word used by people who are afraid to try. Now, as I promised at the start, here is the secret reward. During his final record-breaking run, Burt's bike was wobbling so badly that he almost crashed. To stop the shaking, he made a split-second choice. He moved his body back on the seat to change the weight. This was extremely dangerous because it made the bike harder to steer. But it worked. He later said that he was living more in those 5 minutes than some people live in a lifetime. He wasn't just racing against time, he was racing for the feeling of being truly alive. If you enjoyed this story of the ultimate underdog, make sure to subscribe to the Moto Archive. We bring you the greatest stories from the history of speed every week. Thank you for watching.